How's it going, everybody? Jordan here, and in today's video I'm going to go over my new epic hunter build for Assassin's Creed Odyssey. This build unloads tons of damage and is a build I made during a live stream this past week, and a bunch of you asked me to showcase it in a video, so that's what I'm going to do. Again, if you enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like. It helps the channel a lot. I'd really appreciate it. Let's get right into it. I know a lot of you have been mentioning that epic gear are hard to come by. That's why I made my material video and my get gear video, but I was using this build on a live stream and a lot of you asked me to make a video of it, so that's what I'm doing. It's incredibly fun to play, but if you don't have these exact gear, don't worry. I just did a video on the Masters of Artemis that you can also check out on my channel. The main things about this build that I want to focus on is these few things. The first one's going to be, yes, we're going to be relying heavily on crit chance and crit damage. The second thing is I kind of play this build like Legolas from Lord of the Rings to an extent, where I like to be very up in people's business and not too much from a distance. I like to move quick with this build. This is the build I use to clear forts as quickly as possible and conquest battles. That's honestly why I made this build, was for my gear video that I just released, where I clear a bunch of forts as quickly as possible to get as much gear as I possibly can, and so that's what this build's used for. In order to do that, I rely heavily on the slow time ability. So triggering the slow time ability allows you as a hunter to be able to get a bunch of hits in to get adrenaline back and kill a bunch of people. And then I heavily rely on multi-shot as well. Multi-shot shreds and is honestly one of the best hunter abilities in the game. Now lastly, every part of this build, engraving or piece of gear, comes from the default vanilla part of the game, so it doesn't include any helix item or DLC item. Okay, let's get into the details of the build. So for my primary weapon, I'm using the Atlantean blade from the Elise storyline quest. You can get this weapon by completing it. It's a really fun quest. We get hunter damage, crit damage, which is incredibly useful to our hunter build here, and then the armor penetration to make our basic arrows hit as hard as death arrows, and then I engrave it with the Falx of Olympios engraving of 100% damage but health capped to 25%. The reason I decided to choose that engraving is because I don't expect to get hit very often, so that 100% damage boost goes a long way, especially with this build. In my secondary weapon, I'm using hunter damage, poison damage, and crit damage. So I'm using poison with this hunter build, and then I engrave it with the 25% damage on elites and bosses. This helps me kill bosses very quickly with this build, and mercenaries with 1 to 2 shots of a devastating shot. My bow, I'm using hunter damage, headshot damage, poison damage, and then I engrave it with 10% crit chance. Now instead of doing the bow arrows become poison arrows, I'm going to be using the poison ability to turn poison on to deal that additional damage. When we move to the head, I've got hunter damage, headshot damage, crit damage, and then I engrave it with the 20% crit chance while at full health. On the gauntlets, I'd prefer this to be hunter damage. I don't have that piece of gear, but we have assassin damage, crit chance, crit damage, and then 100% crit damage while at full health. For the chest, we have hunter damage, bow charging speed, poison damage, and then we engrave crit damage. Bow charging speed is a very underrated hunter perk. That additional bow charging speed makes you deal a lot more damage quicker, because the more your bows charge, the more damage you do. On the waist, we're dealing with hunter damage, headshot damage, 10% crit chance, and 100% crit damage while at full health. And then on our boots, we're dealing with 18% hunter damage, crit chance while at full health, bow charging speed again, and then we engrave it with crit damage while at full health. So for the masteries, again, you may not have as many ability points as I do, but look at the primary ones that I'm focusing on. So the primary ones that in the hunter tree that you probably want to focus on are crit damage, headshot damage, damage with bow charge shot, and then if you have extra, put them into bow charging speed, adrenaline on headshot kill, and hunter damage. On the assassin tree, the main ones you want to focus on are crit chance while at full health, crit damage while at full health, and damage damage while at full health. Alright, let's look at the stats for this build. As always, a link to this build details on the ac-builds.com site is in the description of this video, or should be popping up as a card on this video. You can access all these stats that you see here on that site wherever you're at on your phone, so you don't have to pull this video back up again. But the key points that we can see here is we have an additional 310% damage if we land headshots. We have a 93% critical hit chance while at full health, and then an additional 710% crit damage while at full health. This build, when landing headshots, deals so much damage. On top of that, if you proc the poison ability on, you're going to be getting another 157% poison damage stacked on top of it. Even further, because we're using the 100% damage and 25% health cap, we have an additional 282% hunter damage with this build. All of these numbers add up when mixed with the armor penetration. I think this deals the most damage a hunter can possibly do with this particular setup. Alright, let's look at the primary abilities that I use with this build. The primary hunter ability I use is Devastating Shot. This deals a 400% hunter damage increase stacked with crits, stacked with all those stats we just talked about, allowing you to one-shot every single enemy in the game, except for mercenaries. Some mercenaries you can one-shot, other mercenaries you'll have to do 2 devastating shots to kill on Nightmare. In the second slot, I use multi-shot. This is great for clearing conquest battles or groups of enemies as quickly as you can. If you happen to have the DLC and the extra ability points, it doesn't hurt to put some points into rapid shot. It's a fun ability to use, but it's not mandatory. You don't have to use this. Also on the hunter tree, it's important to put 3 points into Sixth Sense, because this particular passive ability will give you a 200% hunter damage boost when you're noticed. So what you typically want to do is, if there's a large target that you want to take out, is you want to get their attention so you get that damage boost and that slow time, and you can take out enemies very quickly that way. On the melee side of the abilities, again, we're going to be focusing on slow time. I think slow time is more valuable with this build than anything else. Like it says, it slows time down and allows you to drop very precise headshots in a row. And honestly, as long as you're using slow time to do that, you can get a bunch of adrenaline back because you're landing headshots while killing a bunch of people at the same time, and it's really helpful in conquest battle. The second ability is going to be Venomous Attacks. This is to turn poison on for you to shoot your poison arrows. That way you can deal that additional 157% damage with poison arrows when this is on. Lastly, we're going to put points into Second Wind. You need to stay at full health with this build, and plus sometimes the way the 25% health cap works is sometimes you'll get hit and it'll immediately lower you to 1 health, and you can re-heal yourself back up using Second Wind. And then the rest of the points are in passive abilities like Shadow Assassin for the crit damage, Weapons Master, Gear Master, and Archery Master. Lastly, I'm going to go over the Transmog for this build. Now, I didn't design this Transmog. This was a design that was given to me on my previous live stream by one of my live stream viewers named Henry. Henry was generous enough to let me wear this on the live stream and let me put this into this video. So shout out to Henry. Thank you for this really cool Transmog that we're about to go over. Now, the hat, as you can see, is the sun hat, which I think only recently has been either bugged out of the game for likely some sort of new pack or April Fool's joke potentially that might be coming out. So if you have the hat, great. If you don't, I'm sure some sort of like hooded thing might look really cool with this, or like one of these Conqueror crowns, something like that. But Henry uses the sun hat, so that's what we used. On the gauntlets, what we're using is the Brawler's gauntlets, the black version. For the chest, we're using the same thing, the Brawler's armor. For the waist, we're doing the Ancient King's waistband. It's a black version. And then on the boots, we're dealing with the boots of Ares. They have these cool spikes on it. So that's my new epic hunter build. I know a lot of you have been asking about how do I get this gear. It's really hard to roll and get the right epic gear. If you'd prefer a hunter legendary set, I just did a video on the Masters of Artemis set, which is the best hunter legendary set in the game, and it deals just slightly less damage than this, but enough on Nightmare to still make it fun and really engaging to play. It doesn't feel weak at all. And another cool thing about this build that I'll just kind of throw in there at the last second is because it's high in crit damage, it is a lot like a hybrid build. You can use the daggers of the Atlantean blade to deal some damage if you need to. Otherwise, most of the time you can just unload arrows into people and wreck them with this build. This build's a lot of fun to play, and like I said, it's very valuable to clearing forts and things like that. It's the fastest conquest clearing, fastest fort clearing build in my opinion. As always, I appreciate all of you guys. If you liked the video, please remember to leave a like and subscribe and hit that bell for more Assassin's Creed Odyssey content. I appreciate all of you, and I'll see you guys next time.
So proud I was born to be Spartan.